today, immediately next to me, is Paula Rogovin, who is a longtime educator and environmental activist. She has led multiple grassroots organizations and movements, including one to ban pesticides in New York City parks. We have Victoria Augustine, who is a community organizer with Beyond Plastics Queens and the Climate Reality Project, the Metro chapter, and she works at the intersection of local action and global climate advocacy. And finally, we have Dr. Gina Moreno, a toxicologist with the New Jersey DEP and a leading researcher on micro and nanoplastics and their impact on human and ecological health. So we have a very well-rounded panel. Thank you for joining us today. So I think let's start with reactions to the film. What stood out most for you, either emotionally or intellectually?
Let's see, is this working?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I taught kindergarten and first graders. That movie is scary, even to us. It's terrifying, right? I see everybody, it's really, right, Jeremy? Terrifying. Now, when I taught little kids, we talked about things that weren't good. We talked about problems. But for me, the hope is that we can find ways to fight against this, to change things. Not to leave ourselves in a state of grief and trauma, which this movie can do, but to see what can we do to change things. And we'll talk about that a little later in the program. That's the only way that I know for children and adults to deal with this kind of horror film.
So as an environmental activist working specifically in plastics, I totally agree with my comrade here. You have to take action, and they didn't emphasize this a lot in the film, but legislation is everything. Because these companies, Coca-Cola and the oil companies, are not going to do this of their own accord. They must be, it has to be law, it has to be set into law for them to follow what we need them to do, which is reduce the plastics.
Thank you for having me today. My reaction to the film is, as a scientist, I put my effort into understanding, analyzing, and getting a better grasp on the problem at hand. And this film reiterates fears that I have because this problem is so multivariable, so many different variables at play that when we talk about microplastics or micro nanoplastics, we're talking about an umbrella term. It's a term that encompasses so many different polymers, so many different additives, so many different sizes, so many different morphologies, that's shape, so many different co-contaminants that may sorb onto the particles. So, it's, when I think about all the multifactorial different variables that are at hand here, it is extremely overwhelming, but I have to say that I am feeling hopeful, especially on the panel with these incredible women, because this is a problem that is a giant mountain. And to move a mountain is going to require a lot of solutions from many different aspects of society. Not only scientists, legislation, people who are advocates and who are going to stand up to this problem.
Thank you. I think in today's news cycle, it's endless and there are so many stories and we so easily forget what we just read or saw. So what is it from today's documentary that's going to resonate with you? What interview, what quote, what moment is going to be the piece that you take away from this and continue to talk about and incorporate into your work?
For me, knowing the science is really important. I honestly didn't know much about plastics when Sam DeFalco contacted me in August 2024 and asked me if I would blockade the entrances to Formosa Plastics in Livingston, New Jersey. That's the US headquarters for a multi-billion-dollar plastics company. I said yes, and we blockaded the entrance. We got arrested, 6 of us got arrested, 2 people pleaded guilty. The rest of us went to court in municipal court in Livingston. We were convicted, we appealed. We won our appeal in the state superior court, and we won, and this is important to this, we won the right to appeal based on using the necessity defense. In other words, this company, Formosa Plastics, is a serial polluter, and protecting the environment and public health was more important than us blockading the entrances to their building. I have to say that my co-defendant, who I absolutely love, I didn't know her before this, she's in the movie, that's Diane Wilson.
Oh.
And we're the Formosa 4, you can go to formosa4.org and read more about the fight. She's been in this fight for decades. And she couldn't be here today because she's at another conference speaking out on this issue, but yeah.
I have to say that part of the film also really sticks with me, because what really stuck with me, how they pour, I think it was 5 million tons a day. I mean, it's terrible, but the bad guys are always the oil companies. They just always are the oil companies.
Yes.
And so whatever kind of activism you do, I mean, if you are fighting big oil, you're fighting the bad guys. That's the most important thing. But I mean, plastics is my specialty.
I think the thing that stood out to me the most about the film, almost like a reverse of your feeling, I have the science in my head. I am overwhelmed by what you just pointed out, is that the plastic industry equals the oil industry. They are synonymous. And this issue, like in the film, is going to take critical masses coming together and really making a difference in this problem.
Thank you. The next question is also for you, Dr. Moreno. The film makes clear that microplastics are in our food, they're in our ecosystems, they're in our blood. What does the current science tell us about these risks? And also, more importantly, what is still unknown?
So let me start with one of the variables that has me the most focused, which is size. Okay, so the size range of plastics ranges from the size they described in the film as smaller than a pencil eraser, or a pencil eraser, and below. So what does that mean to everybody? The size 5 millimeters is something that if it was in my mouth, I would notice it and I would get rid of it. But the other side of that size range is nanometers. Now let's do a little talk about numbers for a minute. Not that people don't know this, but I just like to put it on the table. Nanometers, when we think about DNA as a molecule, is extremely long. I think we say it reaches the moon and back, one strand of DNA within the nucleus of our cells. But the width of that strand is 2 nanometers. Okay, so when we're talking about nanometer-sized particles, we're talking about particles that can interact with our DNA. Subcellular size. These smaller fragments, the smaller end, can enter into cells, and then it's not just this pencil eraser bouncing through our intestines. We're talking about particles that can actually translocate beyond the intestines into circulation. If you're going to respire by inhaling airborne particulate matter, if they're small enough, they can pass through the alveolar epithelial tissue into capillaries and bypass the liver. So the liver is a filtering organ that we have that will filter out a lot of contaminants, but if particles are that size, these are the things that go through my brain frequently is, well, what size is the particle? Because that will kind of dictate what type of outcome will occur. Now larger particles aren't benign, but there's a chance that they may just pass through our gastrointestinal lumen. From your mouth to your anus is a tube, and it's kind of considered still the outside of your body, if that makes sense. And not until things pass beyond those linings into tissue. But within that lumen, there are reports that certain microplastic particles are causing irritable bowel disease, or we'll say there's a correlation between the two, okay? That when we see certain patients with IBD, there are increases in the frequency of plastic particles in those people. Now, not sure if that is preceding the IBD, or if because that tissue is compromised, then particles are sequestering to that area. So size is a big variable that makes a difference insofar as the fate of health outcomes. Beyond that, particle chemistry. We talk about polypropylene, polyethylene, polystyrene, polymethyl methacrylate, polyethylene terephthalate, polyamide. The list goes on and on. There are thousands of different kinds, and when we have the 7 types of plastic, it doesn't end there. Those are the 7 that are probably the most common, but chemistry is everything. I'm a biochemist by training as well, and specificity of different receptors on cells tells us that different chemical structure will result in different biochemical function depending on that chemistry. So we need to also look at if the plastic industry is just synthesizing new polymers on the daily. We are talking about thousands and thousands of polymers that need to be vetted for toxicological outcome. The additives, plasticizers, are a secondary list of chemicals that are next to the actual plastic polymer itself. So I think in the beginning of the film, you saw almost like a cage of it was the polymer, and then it would have like empty space. And that empty space is where the plasticizers sit without being chemically bound to the plastic. So if that plastic is heated up, then you have a higher frequency of leaching of these chemicals, plasticizers like phthalates and BPA, that we do know cause endocrine disrupting outcomes. So it is, like I said, so multi-variable that every and anybody who wants to get involved in the science and figuring out what these different chemicals do would be great.
I mean, the immediate response here is, and I heard it in the room, like, oh my God, this is a problem, this is a human health problem, and that's mostly what you touched on, but it's also an environmental problem. So what is, and this is for anyone on the panel, what is New Jersey or other states doing to address this through either policy or monitoring?
I'll take that question. So in that room next door, New Jersey is trying to pass a bill, and the name of this bill is called the New Jersey Packaging and Paper Product Stewardship Act. In New York, where I come from, we have the Plastic Packaging Infrastructure Act and Recycling Infrastructure Act. And the idea here is that 40% of our municipal waste is actually plastic packaging. And as everybody knows, we don't need to have all this packaging for our items. It's so unnecessary. But of course, you know, the oil companies are making tons of money doing that. So the legislation is about reducing that plastic packaging and making sure that whatever they use to package it with, the items that they're selling, is recyclable. So in the room next door, I've put a few of these, and this explains what the bill is, and also all the different organizations, the environmental organizations, that are, you know, supporting this legislation. And I think the greatest thing that anybody can do is join an organization and participate and help get this legislation passed.
There's also an attempt to get Governor Murphy on his way out to sign a petition directed at the federal EPA. Yeah, here it is. We have information about it in the next room. To have water is tested for various materials, and we want to have the water tested for microplastics. And we need Governor Murphy to take a stand on this, to sign the petition, and to get other states. I think we need 7 states to sign the petition. We have appealed to Governor Murphy. We are still waiting for his response. We're hoping that on his way out, he will work on this. There's a time factor here, so if you can get involved, there's a QR code, or you can just take the whole flyer and get your friends to participate. There's small things we can do, there are big things that we can do. I just want to share this with you. I forgot to hold it up. This is from Diane Wilson. These are the little pebble, the little nurdles, the nurdles from the bay next to her home in Point Comfort. This is what they're digging up. And you know this company, she sued them. How much did she get from them?
50 million.
50 million, and a rule that they cannot dump into the bays anymore. Every month, Diane sends us a list of the violations because they're monitoring. She's going out, they're out in those boats still. They're monitoring it. And that company, Formosa Plastics, which you've not heard of, because they don't sell directly to us, they sell to businesses. They have now $28 million in fines because they just keep dumping. So why do they keep dumping?
Because of the
Cost of doing business. So we have to keep, we have to have the legislation, we have to have the petitions, we have to get the governor to take action, and we're doing it. We're working on it, but we need, you know, if you're involved in the fossil fuel fight, this is, you know, we worked, a lot of you were part of the fight to stop power plants and pipelines. But it's the same fight. It's all fossil fuels. So don't feel like it's a separate fight that you have to join. It's part of the fight around fossil fuels.
Paula, what's the magic 7-state number? I mean, what is that about?
Okay, because there's a clause in at the EPA, it requires the EPA to monitor for contaminants every 5 years. And if 7 states petition the EPA and say, oh, we want you to look into this contaminant, they are required to put it on their list. And they're allowed to have like 30 contaminants every 5 years. So we're trying to get microplastics on that list. And that's what the urgency is. I mean, by the way, it's very difficult to get my governor, Hochul, to sign this thing either. She's not the biggest environmentalist going. As you know, we have all kinds of pipeline fights going on in New York, and it's difficult, very difficult.
So one of the things I'm hearing in this that we haven't directly addressed is how complex this is. That in order to be taken seriously, advocates need to be able to speak in an informed way. You've both spoken about how this science really, stood out to you because that wasn't necessarily the piece you knew. You knew the urgency. How do we ask people to get more involved when these words are 3, 4, 5 syllables and it's so hard to get politicians' attention? How do we balance the complexity and the urgency and make this an issue that's easier to engage people on?
I just want to, one of the first things I learned as an activist really is, it's great to have the numbers and it's great to, give people the stats, but what really moves people are stories, like Paula's. That's what really moves people. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that what my thoughts are that when dealing with big oil, they are going to have lawyers that will annihilate anybody because of the amount of funding that they have to support that. So I think that the science is really important because that will be fact. And they're not going to be able to contest that. So I think it's really important for the science to keep pushing forward. But what I will say is that what I was speaking about earlier about the size, we're not going to be able to very easily clean up nanoplastics. Reverse osmosis on a large scale is not realistic. But what we can do is back up and start at the microplastics and larger to macroplastics that are going to turn into the nanoplastics and get them addressed. And I think advocacy can start there. And this is what I'm saying, it's going to be a multi-angled approach to dealing with this problem. We are going to need to have the activists moving forward immediately, right away. Let the science, because it is so overwhelming, because there are so many variables to study, and it needs to be sound to go up against big oil. We'll continue to do the science. Have the advocacy groups looking at litter and pollution is ugly to look at. We see that, we see garbage around the United States, but nothing compares to what it looks like in Manila, right? Why? Because we took our plastic garbage and we sent it over there for them to deal with. And now a lot of countries that were accepting plastic and garbage waste are saying we don't want it anymore. We're overwhelmed, we can't deal with it. So now it's going to start backing up, like sewage backing up the pipes. And so...
Can I grab the students before they leave? Don't leave, one second, finish, and then I want to say something to you.
I think this is important. I think what you had to say is important.
Yeah.
So it's going to just take every angle, science, advocacy, critical masses, which includes people outside of normally performing science or advocacy, and all coming together.
Right, so what I wanted to say to the students, I saw you were leaving and, sometimes people think you have to go into environmental science, as a major in high school and college. That is important. Some people think you should be, become a scientist. That is important in this fight. But we also need the lawyers. So for example, we had an attorney who did pro bono work for our case and won our case against Formosa Plastics. So we need people in every area. We have songs. We have a group, Solidarity Singers. We sing songs about this. There are poets writing poems about it. So do not feel that you must be a scientist or, all these other areas. All of us are important to this fight. We need all of us in this fight.
Well, I have a question. One of the things that I found really interesting at the end of the documentary where they showed that town in Ontario that was plastic free. We're in Teaneck, we're an activist town, it's an activist film festival. What can we do here in Teaneck to make Teaneck a plastic free town and our neighboring municipalities?
Hey, why don't we invite the folks from that town to come here and we'll have a forum for them?
Well, let's do
You
it.
sponsor, we'll have it right here in this room.
So I work at the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. I was hired as a microplastic expert, toxicologist. That's why I'm there, is to help New Jersey make moves. And let me tell you that I was so excited to go into government policy and supporting policy as a scientist. Let me tell you how wonderful it is, the things that I see, states coming together, especially in this time, states coming together to talk about how they're dealing with. Maybe some states are a little bit ahead of other states. States are starting to band together via Teams meetings or Zoom calls, and you schedule with your group of people. I find that so many people are excited to help each other out because plastic is not a contaminant that exists only on our New Jersey soil, right? A lot of plastic is produced in different regions of the globe, and it's transient. So what our plastic problem is our neighbor's plastic problem and their neighbor's plastic problem. So I encourage anybody that if you have an interest, if you could find some people from that town and reach out and set up a Zoom call and say, hey, how did you get this going? What measures did you take? And that's really fantastic to do.
Also, in the refreshment room, there are little slips of paper with the name Lois Krause. She is head of Beyond Plastics in New Jersey, and her email is there. So you can reach out to her and ask her where you can get involved, etc.
Yeah, and Food and Water Watch is also now involved.
Can you give us some examples on a smaller level of things that we could substitute in our own homes, in our houses of worship, what kinds?
The first thing that I would say is, stop drinking water out of plastic. Either get canned water, or buy a, water bottle. When I came in and met Gina, we both had our water bottles with us. One thing, this is really easy, simple to change. Those cutting boards that are made of plastic, those, that's a lot of plastic that you're cutting up. Bamboo. Bamboo is very cheap, and I bought all bamboo boards for $5 and $7, and they're terrific. They're easy to clean. They're wonderful. You have any other suggestions? Different things? I don't know about houses of worship. You just kind of have to be creative with some of these things.
I'll actually also tackle that a little bit. I would say, think about how you shop. Take one item every time you go, do a little research, and see if there's a plastic alternative. If you're buying milk, there are places that do milk delivery in glass. If you're doing a pasta dinner, don't get your jar sauce and your cheese wrapped in plastic. See if going up to the deli, you can get the cheese wrapped in paper. See if you can buy a glass jar of the sauce, and then you have that research. Don't take everything on at once. It's overwhelming and you'll get frustrated. But each time you take one project, research it. But also, I think as you research it, make sure you're thinking through all the consequences of the other thing. You don't want to just switch to something else that's also going to create different problems. You know, if you can also buy things that are local, supporting a local business, as opposed to something else that is mass manufactured on the other side of the country or the world, so that you have a lot of transportation costs with CO2 emissions. Like, really think cradle to grave about where that one item is coming from, and then track it. Figure out what your biggest purchases are. Start there. You know, maybe you want to move to having reusable dishes as a thing. And then, you know, you just pick that one piece and then expand down your list. That would be a way to do it. And if you have a group, if it's an organization, have each person on the group take one thing, begin there, and bring it together, and then it's a collective process, and it moves faster.